Hello and welcome to the Nature of Invisible Things, the podcast. I'm your host, Erin Kelly, and I'm so glad you're here. This is season 2, episode 20. And today, friend, I have such a treat for you. I am joined by erotic ceremonialist, healer, and fellow 8th house Libra sun, Grace Allerdice. And before I share more about the episode and introduce Grace to you, I wanted to welcome you if you're new here. I am a devotional astrologer and esoteric strategist. And if you're interested in learning more about me or my work, you can check out my website, slowmagic.com. Follow me on Instagram at slow.magic or find the nature of invisible things on Substack. Oh, so this episode, I just adore Grace, first of all, and I think you will too by the end of this episode. Together, we explore the similarities in our astrology and interests, which include death, walking the path of devotion, and magic. We also discuss the qualities and challenges of being deeply Venusian, the importance of self-discovery, and the power in alchemical partnerships. Our conversation covers spiritual growth, initiation processes, and the transformative power of desire. And Grace shares her personal journey from her evangelical upbringing to embracing magical practices and embodiment. I am so excited for you to listen in. This whole conversation was such a delight. And you can also watch this episode on YouTube if you'd like. So you can find a link in the show notes. So, welcome, Grace. Let me read Grace's bio to you. Grace Allerdice is an erotic devotion coach, healer, ceremonialist, and teacher whose synthesis of embodiment, eroticism, magic, and spiritual traditions brings a powerful alchemy for modern mystics. With 20 years of teaching movement and embodiment to all ages, she has developed a unique ability to facilitate powerful transformational spaces and guide people towards their soul, the part of you that is already whole and already knows. As a ceremonialist priestess, Grace brings deep experiential knowledge that extends far beyond academic study. She has cultivated rare expertise in practicing presence, navigating the emergent, and fostering profound intimacy with clients. This artistic background, combined with her certifications as a Pilates and yoga instructor, provides her with practical somatic tools for translating mystical concepts into lived physical experience. She is the host of the highly rated Homebody podcast, and she facilitates transformational courses, workshops, and retreats, both in person and online. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia, with her hot husband, dogs, garden, and so many books. And I've got links to Grace's website, her newsletter, sign up, her podcast, as well as a free offering that she's having on December 5th and 6th in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. Enjoy. Well, welcome, Grace, to the Nature of Invisible Things podcast. I am so glad that you're here.
I'm so happy to be here and talking to you. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. For listeners, I met Grace in an online community container, and I have just always appreciated Grace's candor and in these online connections in these groups, some of the things that Grace would bring up and talk about or chat about, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, I love that too, or I feel that way too. And then I found out we had some similar astrology.
hmm
And so I was curious for listeners if you would share what you feel comfortable sharing about your astrological makeup.
I think the thing that's we both have pretty significant Taurus placements. Um, we're both Pisces rising with the sun in the eighth house in Libra. And I think that's a lot of even though we have a lot of other significant things going on that are very different, I think we're interested in and approaching the things that we're interested in similar ways, even though,
Mhm.
of course, the people we are, our experience, the ways that we hold space, and some of our tools might be different. There's a way that we're pulling at similar threads and interests in similar ways.
Totally, totally. I have had a few, well, at least one other person on the pod who is a Pisces rising with a Libra sun. And they have
Mm.
a Scorpio moon. And so I'm like, oh, that we do exist. There's like a whole little group of us out here of these kind of Venusian Jupiterian types, but with this very I want to, what is the word I'm looking for here? I want to say like not unafraid, because I think that's kind of part of it, but like not turned off by some of the more gruesome parts
Hmm.
of being human in this incarnation.
Hmm. And if anything, maybe turned on by it.
Oh, okay. So see, this is what I'm talking about, people.
Yeah. Turned on by
Turned on by
them,
it.
attracted to them. Yeah, it's giving, I was thinking about it a little bit as I was sitting outside before our call, and it's giving a lot of like Persephone vibes.
Mhm.
It's there's this way that a part of, again, of course, every chart is different, blah, blah, blah. Um, this way that there's this like Venusian rehearsal of going underground, learning to get married and have sex and enjoy it in the underworld, come back up and you do it again and you do it again and you
Yeah.
do it again. And so it's that really feminine, what's the word Demetra uses? Metacosmios
Hmm.
vibe that also has this very, yeah, Venusian orientation that's very feminine and relational and sexual and seasonal. It's just very woven in a way. So, yeah, learning to get turned on by and in the underworld.
Hmm.
And then also be, I think there's a component of our work, and we go about it in different ways, probably, of being able to help narrate that experience for people or doula midwife people through those experience. And then for me, I don't know about for you, which maybe you could talk about, is like initiate people into those experiences
Hmm.
as well.
Definitely.
Because we can, again, we're not as afraid of that. We're more familiar. That terrain is familiar
Hmm.
for us, whether it's what we would have originally chosen or not. So,
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. Like this just happened to be my path, and so there was a little bit of coming to terms with acceptance of what it is, and in a way that was freeing to be able to put other stuff down and stop trying to be good or stop trying to fit in a certain way or look a certain way. I think the physicality of it too, especially like being a little bit grotesque,
mhm,
but finding the aesthetic in the
mhm.
unpalatable.
Yes. And the beauty in
Hmm.
that. I think that's true. I think you just said it really, really well. And I think acceptance is a big part of coming into ownership with any life path. We all have
Hmm.
things in how our life functions, whether we're reading it through astrology or not, that are we're going really well and not going really well. I don't have a public facing astrology practice anymore, but I think within that, I've sat in front of like one chart that was like a giant big triangle.
Mm.
And there, you know, but we all have things that are challenging and things that are not. And I think acceptance is a key foundation to coming into like ownership with our lives. And I know for me, I don't know if it's true for you, but a lot of the ways that some of that Piscean wisdom and interest comes through has had a lot of challenge as far as for me recognizing, is this actually a gift? And also with that sort of eighth house challenge of that weaker hidden sun of being, how, what does it mean to be visible? Do I try to be visible? Do I push myself out there? Do I pull people in? And that's a kind of a constant game. It's an interesting setup, each thing
Hmm.
that we're all dealing with, that of course is going to pull us through the needle of whatever it is our soul is interested in, even if it's not what our personality would prefer at a given time.
Definitely. I think you nailed something in what you just shared about, is this a gift? For me, there is a trust that through everything, I might not see it immediately, but there is some sort of gift. And I think that's the Venusian, right? It's like looking for the connection, looking for the way that it brings things together. And then I think the Jupiterian part, like Pisces is different than Sagittarius, but that's where my Venus happens to be. And there's this synthesis that happens with Sagittarius that's like, we'll make it make sense. It'll make sense eventually. Like we might not know right now, but eventually it'll make sense. And also that the luminary, I think there's something Libra being sun in fall anyway, like no matter where it's placed in the chart, and then to have it in this very, I love in Vedic astrology, the eighth house is considered the aperture, the opening, which again, when I'm thinking about things that kind of turn you on, like openings are sexy, right? Like you
They
can
are.
see, there's lots of interesting things to explore there. So this like very intimate place of intersectionality between charts as well. Like it's the house of death, but it's the house of shared resources. It's our stuff. So being able to like get in there and with a Venusian lens, I think is fascinating. And then there's this concept, I don't know, I'm curious as a eighth house Libra sun, if you relate to this, of the Holy Fool, I think a lot about with Libra, which might be like a bit of a stretch at first, but
Mm,
with Libra being the only inanimate sign of the zodiac, and I think of it like being able to try on and really get to know each of the different signs. It's
mm,
almost like there's that thing, that stereotypical thing. They're like, oh, Libras are just what they're showing you is like what you want to see, or they're very agreeable, or they're just kind of reflecting to you more of the same. And it's like, yeah, but what a skill that is to kind of be able to be with different people in different situations and harmonize with who they are and getting to experience that in a very real, kind of tangible way for a moment.
hmm. Totally. And I think what you're describing is the gift of what that placement can be.
Hmm.
And then the shadow of that or the non-functionality of that could be all you do is people please, which could be maybe the first 20 years of my life.
Same.
I remember this moment in college in particular. I had a lot of codependent relational patterns and a lot of people pleasing, a lot of like deep good girl grooves. And I remember this moment of standing in front of my closet, of course, a very Venus moment, and being like, I don't even know what I like to wear. Like
Wow.
me, I don't know what me would choose if I weren't thinking about what other people would think. But then, of course, now that it's been 20 years since that happened, there's a lot of, I've been gifted the opportunity to refine how I relate to that. And it is a lot of what you describe, which makes it very good. I can be friends with anybody.
Hmm.
And sometimes I make that a fun game. By the time I'm done checking out my groceries, me and this checkout person are going to be best friends. I can do it. I know I
Totally.
can. And it's really fun. It's a very flirty way of being with life. And it's a way I think that can be a very helpful therapeutic skill, which is good in the kinds of work that we do, being able to relate to others in that way. And it's soft skills, which it can be easy to take for granted, but a lot of people don't have them. I'm frequently sitting at an event or something that is trying to be very meaningful and beautiful. And I'm like, wow, I wish someone knew how to do a crossfade. It would be
Mm-hmm.
so nice if that music faded in, and things like that, where slowly over time, these gifts that are either highly commercialized or really overlooked have helped me come into this sense of actually being able to make something special is a gift. Being able
Hmm.
to see what's going on with someone's underworld shit is a gift. And like, I know the way through. Devotion is a gift. Not everybody knows how to do that. And I do.
Hmm.
And I think time, that's the gift of the natal placement rather than an election, right? Is that we have time to get to know what this is and how we can become mature with it and become the gift of what that placement can be, for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, I love what you just shared about that. There are times I see so many charts that are so much better than mine in my line of work. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes I get a little envious. Like I'm like, this person really has, they have like so many placements in exaltation or in domicile. They're in angular houses. It's just like chef's kiss. And I'm like, wow, what would it be like to have that life? And then I have to remember that there's something about mine that even though if I can't see it all the time or experience it all the way that or in the way that I think I should be experiencing it, that there's something beautiful here too.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
something wise here. And I feel, who was I telling recently? I'm really enjoying the vantage point of midlife. I don't think there's any age that I would go back to,
Mhm.
honestly. And the perspective of all the things that have been really, really difficult learnings that were really painful at the time, of course, but they're not painful anymore. And there's stuff that I own now. And I know if I talk about a certain thing or if I'm bringing a particular energy to something, I know other people can feel it because I know that that wisdom is my bitch. Like I own
Yes.
it. Like,
Yes.
no, and that's a real gift. And we're all, as you know, who knows what we're all here to be doing and learning. And now I'm super grateful for the things that have been incredibly hard. But that, of course, is intricately woven into what, of course, my soul is here to understand that suffering can be grace, that the
Yeah.
wound can be the gift. And there's only really one way to learn that.
Right. Exactly. To go through it. And that's, I think, so much of my own and what I witness, but also, I mean, I can own this within myself is avoidance of pain or
Mhm.
avoidance or what I'm perceiving might be painful,
Mhm.
right? Like it's the attachment to comfort or the attachment to even if things aren't ideal, but they're certain because I know this story that I've told about myself or that I believe about myself. Like I know what this feels like, and it's scary to like sometimes if you have this story about yourself to put it down because if you have overly identified with it in some way it's like who are you without that narrative,
Mhm.
but it's fun to explore.
Mhm. Definitely. I mean, I think if someone's on a spiritual path, that's going to come up a lot because unless you learn who is the I behind the ego, there's not a whole lot we can do. There's not, it's you, and those moments where we're having to crash through the things that we think are certain or the ways that we want to be perceived or the ways that we're attached to to being understood.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's a big one. And that they will, what's the right way I'm trying to say this? The only way I can really think of it in this moment is in Jungian terms. We have to constellate the self, the capital S self. If we do not constellate the self, we can't actually heal. We can't recall projections. We can't get to like the truth of who we are. Or if we're thinking about Crowley, like we can't get to our true will. We can't get to our true desire if we don't constellate the self. And that is spiritual work, which means we will, of course, as you and I know, get to those points where we're like, well, this is super comfortable and cozy, how and who I've been. But we know by now that there's something else in the background that wants to be known more than that.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's true for you, but me as a deeply Venusian person and also a very Jupiterian person, like I want that wisdom. I deeply
Yeah.
desire that wisdom and I will jump off the cliff.
Yes, same. I totally vibe with that because there's this point where you have to take the leap into the unknown. And I think that's where the Jupiterian, I've heard like Venus and Jupiter call us to move towards something, right? It's like we might not know what it is exactly. It's that I'll know it when I feel it or I'll know it when I see it. And I have trust and faith that it's going to be there on the other side. Because sometimes it is, and it's exhilarating, I think, but also very frightening to jump into the void, to jump into the unknown. And there comes a point in time, and I was just talking about this with Britton LaRue, who was on the podcast. It hasn't aired as the time that we're recording this, but it'll air very shortly. But this idea of like you can be a scholar of something only for so long, but then if you want that embodied wisdom to become gnosis, to become like your own experience of it. And I think so much of like the esoteric text, it's purposefully confusing for many reasons, but I think the only way to really understand it is to go through it yourself and have it make not make sense necessarily, but have it, I wanted to use the word perform, have it appear or have it experience it against that constellation of self
Hmm.
and like understand how that all fits together and like what is true and what's not true. But I hear you on that. Like, I want the knowledge. I don't know about you, Grace, but I know partnership is a topic for you at present or ongoing, like most of it. I mean, everything. We're in relationship to everything in the world, but particularly with a partner. And I have conversations like this with my partner somewhat regularly, just about how um, s- somewhat scary and destabilizing it can be like when you're walking this path because it's potential to kind of like blow up the spot in a way, like to dismantle everything that we thought we knew about each other and everything that we thought was true. And then it's such a special agreement with that person that we're here in it and we're going to like look at it together or be committed to, I want to say like the higher goal or the higher objective, like no matter what happens.
There's so much in what you just said, and maybe I can remember which of the things I want to respond to. But yeah, the way I talk about what you're speaking to is devotional partnership,
Hmm.
or Stephen Jenkinson would call it matrimony. And the way that I often talk about it is sort of the foundational re-understanding that we have to do is that partnership is not a commodity, partnership is alchemy.
Mm.
And that is a different kind of exchange than I just want to get married or I want the security of having it. Those are completely different things. They're not the same kind of agreement. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I feel that, yeah, the Jupiter, Venus things are things we want to move towards. And if they're inviting us to the things that are through the veil, the things that are capital T true, there's a way too that I've noticed in myself that I'm like, oh, we're going towards the void. I'm like some insane witch with like her tongue hanging out. I'm like, let's fucking go. Like I'm excited. I was like, oh, we're getting our head chopped off again. Yeah. Like I just get there's something kind of kinky about how it comes through in my spirit now. Like I just like the reward has become so great that you're like, oh, we're doing this again. I get to feel close to her. Fantastic.
Hmm.
And that's been an interesting thing that I've noticed. But the esoteric texts are hiding a lot of things for a lot of reasons, as you said, that we don't have to all go into. It disguises itself to protect itself, but also to seduce us. You know, it's
Hmm.
interesting that they still talk about, the philosopher's stone or the gold of alchemy is like, oh, we're going to get a bunch of money if we do this. And you're like, nah, like that's hilarious. Maybe go for it and find out. There's a way that because it's inviting us to engage with mystery more than anything. And it makes me think too of in like tantric lineages, the red yoginis, they're showing up like covered in poop and like dressed up like a slut from the low caste right up to the monastery and be like, are you going to follow me? And it's like the people studying the books and the writing and abstaining from the world. And like, oh, we're studying and we're meditating all day and we're learning about God. She's like, follow me and find out. Like, it's a very different approach.
Hmm.
And obviously, that's what I'm interested in because that's the only way to know. And it's inviting us into that in the same way that I think relationship is something that Jean-Yves Leloup says that I really love, that God is relation. It's how we are together that pulls us, that in between of who we are and who you are and who we find in the center of that, that's really inviting us into what I think is the alchemical process versus an exoteric practice, which is just follow these rules and we'll say that you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, the I love everything you just shared, and I also feel what you were just saying about following the exoteric made me think about the responsibility that comes along with it, because I think that's why, I mean, because for me, I'm like, why wouldn't people want this?
Yeah, it's so obvious to us. We're like, it's all that
Right?
I want.
It's, and I am like, and I can get kind of, I can gaslight myself sometimes. I don't know if you ever do that to yourself, but I do. I like to consider things from all perspectives. And sometimes I'll be like, do I have it wrong? Like what, like I'll go down this like little route to explore, like, okay, well, what if, like, why wouldn't you? And I just come back. to the fact that the responsibility feels heavy to some. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it, but that's one place where I've kind of like, oh, it must feel too heavy to carry. Especially, I guess, if you think you're carrying it by yourself, then it is going to feel very heavy. Making your own decisions and the choice, really,
For sure.
to think
But
for
it's
yourself.
also interesting that everyone wants to feel like a queen, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, like sovereignty is responsibility.
Yes.
If you're the queen, it's on you.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to be a queen. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Oh, and treat me like a goddess. Well, then you got to act like one.
Hmm.
Like if you want reality to respond to you like a goddess, then you're going to have to become one. And I'm not sure if that's something that you're ready to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because it encompasses so much more than just the sunshine and roses aspects of that. It's the totality. It's the poo.
If you want to go up, you got to go down in equal measure.
I love that. You want to go
Hmm.
up, you got to go down. It's so true. It's so true. Grace, I would love to hear you talk about your work right now, just as a whole, and maybe like your journey through your work, or just presence, like whatever you feel comes up for you in this moment.
Usually, when I'm trying to orient myself quickly to people with the right tone and summary, I say two things. I say I'm a slut for devotion and I live up the pussy of the feminine. And usually, those two things together can start to give people a sense of what it is I'm doing with my time. My work is, I went through a bit of a rebirth about 2 years ago now, and my work is heavily and solely constellated around devotion to the mother, the capital F feminine, the alchemical feminine, the capital Y yin, whatever you want to call it. And for me, that has very particular faces, a very particular energy connected to some very specific lineages, like alchemy and tantric Buddhism and the Shakta lineage in Hinduism and yeah, and Western esotericism even further down from alchemy. And it's really about, I think that that is alchemically what's needed in our culture. But I think there's also a very particular strand of that that I'm finding that's been hooking with a lot of people that come into my work, whether that's through my membership or one on one work specifically, is really this erotic way of being with how we live our lives, including our devotion. It's so plugging in this background of working with embodiment and movement and somatics with this magical practice and study together is really the marriage that I'm interested in as we run with our tongues hanging out and our tops off towards self actualization.
Yes.
Yeah. Which
I
of
love
course
that.
includes our relationships, our sex life, intimacy, magic, like all the things that we're obsessed with, at least you and I.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how did the path find you, or how did you step onto it or fall into it, as sometimes we do?
I think I've always been a deeply spiritual person. I don't think I know that. I grew up in evangelical Christianity, which looked really sort of progressive on the outside, but at its roots was still incredibly conservative and fundamental and dogmatic in its own way. And I was just like the bestest, goodest little girl. And I think that's because being such a mystical person, like I had very direct experiences of feeling close to God and like Jesus specifically. I was like, Jesus feels really cool. Like I just remember being like, this feels great. And then, of course, as I got older, my life got more complex. Some of the very like overly simplified, dogmatic bullshit things around conventional religion started to feel really constricting and really tight. And eventually I left. I think the last words I thought when I just walked out of a church were, there's too much talking. I just remember being like, everyone needs to shut up. You don't know. I just remember, and that was all that I knew. And there were little things along the way that I remember my mom, ironically, giving me a copy of what was it, Sue Monk Kidd's Dance of the Dissident Daughter.
Oh, I love that book.
And it being the first time it really occurred to me, like, why isn't God a she? But at the time it didn't hook into anything. And there were other like little things along the way that, what was the other book? Love Wins by Rob Bell, where he was like, either it's unconditional love or it ain't. The end. I was like, thank you, Rob. I'm out.
Hmm.
And it took a really long time. I had to really find myself. As Ram Dass would say, you have to become somebody before you become nobody. And I was nobody. I didn't have a self. I was incredibly codependent. I was a good little rule follower. I was incredibly people pleasing. And I had to reject all of that, have no idea who I was or what was actually true, and just go head first. And so I did that for a really long time. And ceremonial magic, alchemy, yoga is what really started to thread me back in. And I remember that essentially Mary Magdalene came to me, and through following her threads, her red thread, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
following her threads and sort of the lineage of esoteric reverence and worship and legend for her, a lot of my work really unfolded. And it has since, it's like the more I go into it, the more it intersects with everything. And the more I feel like, oh, this is capital T true. I remember reading this beautiful book about tantric Buddhism and sort of women in that lineage as well. And just being like, this is everything that I think. I didn't know this was a real thing. And now I'm like, oh, it's real and it's wonderful. And so you're just automatically plugged into this resonance and this truth. It gives, what's the word? It sort of boosts the thing that you know is true. I always feel like the universe is winking at me because she pushes me into learning everything the hard way, 100%. And then I'll conveniently read a book 5 years later that's like, oh, yeah, this is it. And I just get this little wink of validation that's only for me and I'll never be able to get anywhere else. There have been some really specific, highly initiative or initiatory moments where the different faces of the feminine that I'm particularly devoted to have come through very strong, like big booms, is kind of how they felt. And I remember one time in particular, because Babylon is a very big part of that constellation for me. And I just remember laughing while this massive download is happening. And of course, I'm also having sex at the time. And of course, there's this massive thing happening. And I just remember laughing to myself inside while all of these layers of reality are happening. Oh, she's doing this so that I'll just talk about her all the time. It's so that, like, she's doing this so that I'll just be absolutely obsessed and I just can't help but talk about her all the time. And so that's what my work is because I just can't. Like, it's literally become such a massive part of who I am to where it can't help but be the offering and her medicine and her person and her poetry and her principles. Like, they're just so a part of me now.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, that just special red flavor that I love so much. And I feel so grateful for like the poetry and the irony of all the ways that my journey led me here. That if you had told me this 20 years ago, it would have been hilarious. Like, oh, I'm going to be her. Like, that's impossible. And now it feels so ironic and beautiful and hilarious that I can't help but like really marvel at it and enjoy it.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Grace. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. I love to hear people's experiences because I think one thing that you hit on for me that I just am realizing about myself and my own devotional path is that one of the reasons I love it is it's an engagement with the divine that feels fucking good.
Yeah.
Like it's okay
Even when
to
it feels bad, it feels good. It's kinky as fuck.
it
Yeah,
it's like versus it being more sterile or prescriptive. I mean, I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum. Like if
for
you
sure.
like,
Do you?
yeah, do you if you like your devotions the way that they are, that's fine. But I just love Venus is the embodied benefic. Jupiter, and that's one thing that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both and I think that's the one thing that I really like about this path is it includes, or at least for my experience of it, and it definitely sounds like yours too, it includes the embodiment of who we are on this earth.
Yeah, it's that downward pointing pussy triangle.
Yes.
Here,
Yeah, right
you have
here.
babies down, not up. Hmm.
That's totally true. Totally true. And it feels good to me. Like I can remember my first, I guess, devotional blissed out experience was also on the yogic path. It was through, I practiced Kundalini yoga for many, many years and taught it and all of those great things. And it was a wonderful path. There's lots of stuff I could say about that I'm not going to get into right now. There are definitely folks that had not great experiences, and that's completely valid and true. However, I did really enjoy like the chanting and the mantra in particular, and then kirtan. That was where I started to realize, holy moly, like this is it. Like this to me is one of the practices that I want to continually be involved in and participate in and share with other people. And that was such a beautiful experience. So that was like my, I guess, dipping my toe into more of a being able to experience the divine with other people in a different way than I grew up, which I didn't grow up evangelical, but I grew up very conservative.
Yeah, I deeply, I mean, I will chant over meditate any day.
Oh,
If I'm alone in my room and it's dark outside, there's a 99.9% chance that's what I'm doing. And, a lot of the tantric lineages, like chanting is a massive part of that. It's not about emptying your mind
mhm.
and abstaining from the world. It's about invoking the divine to come down and be with you and be you and out and therefore alchemize or constellate the self. And yeah, I deeply love the chanting and the mantra, and very much it's a very sound in general, song in general is such a powerful practice. And honestly, I think I loved singing in church a lot. I love being with my voice, and you can feel those moments where the portal opens and like the voice comes through. And even in my one-on-one practice, if I'm just doing one-on-one like hands-on work or energy work, like I'm just like you're just going to get sung to if you're in here. It's going to
Mm,
happen. And there's something deeply beautiful about that I really love. And I think if I hadn't loved the singing in church so much, I honestly would not have stayed as long as I did, because I remember thinking, where else am I going to get to do this?
mhm,
And I think that's still a part of my life that I'm trying to find more places for it to live, because I think it's so powerful and beautiful and I love it so much. My sister-in-law was leading a kirtan when we were visiting her in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago. And she has an exquisite, I mean, whenever she opens her mouth, it's very clear that that is a massive part of her gift. And it was just such a gift to be with other people who are in that practice and know how to open the portal and enjoy it and just let the sound come
mhm.
through. It was just such a, yeah, it's beautiful. The end.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think for me too, it's like I enjoy singing, but I'm not a singer, if you know what I mean by
Yeah.
that.
Well,
I mean,
chanting has room for that too.
totally. It's like I sound good when I do this with all these other people.
Yes.
Like not well, and not that I need to sound good, but like it's part of the aesthetic experience.
Yeah. We're Venus people. We give a shit
Mhm.
and about that. And a harmonium can cover a multitude of sins, which is
Totally.
another reason why it's so wonderful.
Yeah, and this like shared experience as well, the reflection of seeing the self in another or like having this communal experience. Just it's just very different than and I think too, it's also I don't know, there's different I've been to different kirtans, but like, I just remember singing in church, like we're all in pews. We're
Mm,
all facing the front. There, I never got that like we're connected or we're together. It was
hmm.
more of this is something that you do.
Yeah. We're just
It
supposed to do this.
we're just supposed to do this. Yeah, and this is the way it's done. And I'm sure there was ways to kind of like tap into some of the things that I experienced in other ways there or available. It just nobody taught that to me or nobody like shared. It didn't happen in that way. And I think that was you were talking about, the finding your pathway and how, the religion that you grew up with just seemed to get more constricting over time. I felt similarly. Like I felt like the what I knew of a child as God, I didn't get that. I got that more just by myself in my room as a kid.
100%.
Versus like when I got confirmed, I really wanted to feel something. I remember kneeling at the front at the altar and I'm wanting to like feel the Holy Spirit nothing happened.
Yeah, I think I remember a friend of mine who was a devout atheist and an obsessive academic, maybe still is, I don't know, but gifted me a book of Henry James, something, it's The Varieties of Religious Experience. And I read it and I remember getting to the chapter about basically the mystical experience and realizing, oh, what I'm experiencing is a thing. It's not something that I can only get here. Yeah, because that dissonance I think is very painful of being like, if this is I feel connected to the divine, and if this is where the divine lives, I want to be close to it, but everything about being in this space feels suffocating and awful. And that can be a really painful dissonance to live through. And I think a lot of people have experienced that, especially people who do the kind of work that we do, is like we've had to rebuild and re-encounter what we know in a whole other way, let a paradigm for reality come crashing down, and then have to rebuild another one that I am now grateful for, because a lot of people never do that, whether they were brought up religious or not. And there's a particular kind of resilience and like closeness with transformation and truth that I think can only come that way. And I feel very grateful for it now.
Mm,
I think
yeah.
if anything, well, if you're engaged in any kind of initiatory work, you're like, well, part of that, that's now part of my job where I just give that castle a little shake.
Yeah. Ooh. Yes. I think the initiatory part is so I honestly don't talk about that a whole lot. I could only talk about what it was like for me and how I know it can be for people, how it can just knock down everything you thought you knew, and how it's really destabilizing for people, you know?
Definitely.
And so it's owning my malefic parts and owning my parts that seem somewhat contradictory to like the harmony and peace that I usually am wanting to create. And so it's almost like having to frame, not having to frame, but knowing that like this is part of the process. Like these tower moments exist on purpose. It's intentional because the harmony that seems to be there is false harmony, or it's like living in someone else's temple that's not
Mm-hmm.
your temple.
The nature of initiation itself is a death experience, is a death resurrection experience. If you go all the way through it, some people don't. Some people just stop at the death part. And I don't know that we're all supposed to embody the frequency of initiation.
Yeah,
And even if we are, I don't think necessarily we're supposed to embody that all the time. Obviously, not every moment calls for that.
right.
And so there's a lot of listening and sensitivity to this kind of work, to touch back on some of the gifts of that sun in Libra. For what's for this person? What's right now? What's my job? What's not my job? And I
Mhm.
think there are ways that culture used to hold some of these moments for us. For instance, puberty initiation rites, even marriage used to be an initiation rite, or having a baby. And there's a way that a lot of that has really, it doesn't naturally exist in what we would see in the mainstream culture now, especially in North America, where the initiations are just part of the religion of like secular materialism, like you've got a car or whatever it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I think that death initiation is death, and I also think that the process of constellating the self, going through initiation, like at some point the teacher drops off and you got to go down there by yourself. I always think of the moment in Star Wars where Yoda's like, you got to go in the cave.
Mhm.
And who's in the cave? It's the part of you that you think is bad. It's the part of you that you're afraid to be, or you're saying about like making peace, like malefic thing. And, initiation and alchemical paths go together, because on alchemical paths, the question of am I good or bad is not relevant. That's not what
Right.
alchemy is interested in. Like that's the wrong question. It's how do I become all of it
Mhm.
together? That's the alchemical question. I mean, yeah, I watch it a lot, especially women in particular are just so worried about somebody thinking they're bad. Like, and there is absolutely no way, zero way you can get to wholeness, heal, feel powerful, sovereign. There's no way you can constellate the self if that's your question. It's just not going to happen. It can't.
Yeah, that was a huge one for me, and I still catch it showing up once in a while. And it shows up in different forms too. Like It's so funny how my mind just naturally compartmentalized my life, and I am me in all of the places that I go in my life. Like, why would it be any different? I think codependence in particular, like, I used to think I was just codependent in my intimate relationships. Oh no, that shit was everywhere. But it was once I started to work on it in my personal one-to-one relationships that I could start to see it in all of these other places. And that was really helpful. So I feel, yeah, it's not always everything at once. Sometimes you just start to like work on like a part of it, and then the rest starts to kind of materialize in that way.
Yeah, and that's I think what you just voiced is one of the gifts of a relationship. Like if you're in a partnership with the understanding that it is a crucible, as well as other things. That's one of the gifts of it. No one's going to rub you quite like that person is. No one's going to reflect back to you quite like that person is. What a gift
It,
and a pain in the ass at the
yeah,
same
I
time.
was just gonna say, like, I need to like remind it. And I think that's challenging too for women in particular. The Especially as I'm in perimenopause, there's a lot of things that I just don't have the energy for anymore. And I'm not going to sugarcoat, I'm not going to wear the mask if I don't feel like putting it on, I'll say. And that's, I think, been challenging for people in my life, and you have this people-pleasing, agreeable Libra person all your lifetime, and then suddenly I'm sharing my opinions.
Oh no.
Suddenly I have opinions. It's one thing to have them, but now I'm sharing them with other people or preferences. And I have been more vocal with saying like what I like and what I don't like in my just in general. And it's been interesting to notice the response.
Yeah, because all these people were trained to be around you in an entirely different way.
Yeah. To be free to share an opinion that is contrary or sounds somewhat negative. It's just an opinion. It doesn't have, that's, I think, the hardest thing, that either my delivery is off, which I don't think so, or it's just this reaction of like, it seems like I'm complaining. And I'm like, am I complaining, or am I just saying I actually don't like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a lot of, it's never just one thing. I
Right.
think there's always a lot of things going on at once. We were talking about this like attachment to like the little case I or the ego. That's where most people are. That's why most people grip so hard to their beliefs and so hard to their, favorite celebrity or their clothes, like whatever the thing
Mm,
is, because they're like, well, that's who I am. Is this story? Is this belief? And if you have, well, the only way to get to the point where you're not super attached to those things and just be like, this is just what I think. This is my story. The only way to get through that is if that's had to like die and get reborn a few times. And most people haven't done that. And so they're very offended by someone having a different opinion, etc.
yeah.
But even in non-magical circles, I think about the book Conflict is Not Abuse by Sarah, what's her name? I can't remember. But there's a somatic layer going on there where just like your nervous system doesn't feel safe in conflict, which is different than perceiving actual danger. They're not
Hmm.
necessarily the same thing. Yeah, and then there's just the way that we are so oriented in our world today and in institutional religion and all things like that, where we've been trained that belief is the most important thing about being with someone else. And being with others isn't about belief.
Right.
That's not how we are human together. I don't need someone else to think everything that I do in order to be in the same room with them, but most people do. I mean, there's just so much going on there in what you said, and it's so cool. I've heard a lot of people who kind of go through the menopause portal where that's one of their biggest transformations, or the things that fall off, is that shift of being, that's of course hormones are a big part of that. Your body is really supporting you to be the a more true version of who you are,
Hmm.
which is really cool.
It is cool. It's so much like adolescence, but the opposite direction, but it's similar. Like your body is changing and you're not quite sure what's happening. You have all these new sensations or difficult experiences. And I only say difficult because it's uncomfortable.
For
It can
sure.
be uncomfortable, just like growth spurts are uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but when I was in high school and I was still in my like early high school, my knees just ached all the time because like my body was growing and I was getting larger in all kinds of different ways. And like, yeah, and now I have, yeah, uncomfortable sometimes. And that might make me like a little bit more cantankerous, you know? I'm not gonna get like the polite version is served her purpose and she's dead now.
Hmm. Bye bye.
Bye. And that's great. So I'm curious, Grace, like the folks that find their way to you, like could you share or folks that are called to work with you in all of their different capacities, could you share a little bit about some of the things that they share, either archetypally or things that are happening in their lives, or maybe some of the things that you see most often?
Feel like there's about two kinds of people who tend to show up through the door the most, and they're wrestling with similar things in very different ways based on sort of their nature. Almost all of them are trying to build businesses. I don't teach about business in my work, but a lot of driven, ambitious, creative, spiritual people, or people who want to become more spiritual, or something has happened in their life, whether it's like a death or divorce, or they've lost their job or something like that, an initiation, if you will, that has kicked them into something else must be true. It's not exclusively women, but it's a lot of women who don't feel like their life is erotic at all, who are not connected to the mother, are not aware of this, of an innate intrinsic power that can pulse through their body in a very different way than what most spiritual paths are teaching. And it's a lot of people, what's underneath a lot of it, or at least what I see, is usually these things of like, of worthiness, of proving the self, of am I good? Will I be good? Is lurking under there some way, this way that they're still contained by what if I'm misunderstood? What if I do it wrong? It's a lot. And like the earth signs are like gripping really hard, trying to control external reality so that they can create an illusion of security and success. And maybe once I get this success mark box checked, then I will feel worthy and proving myself enough, which of course we all know will not happen. And then there's the people who are more of like the people who are spiritual by nature, incredibly sensitive, incredibly empathic, that are, tend to be alchemically the way that we would describe it, is that they're hanging out in this albedo phase where they're just sort of in this like transcendy soul and matter disconnect. They wouldn't articulate it this way, but this is what's going on. And they need to get their hands dirty,
Yeah.
and they need to come all the way down and all the way in and intersect the parts of them that they think are good and bad, intersect the parts that they think are disparate and opposite, and bring them together into a red hot, sexy union inside of them, which is deeply spiritual and deeply embodied, erotic and devoted.
Hmm.
And those are the two people who are walking through the door. And how they're approaching that, how the degree to which they're crippled by it is different for everyone. Some people are like, I literally can't post about my services on Instagram because I'm so worried someone will misunderstand me or think I'm bad. And other people are really high performing, high achieving people. But because the material plane has worked so well for them, they're not quite sure why it's not feeling as fulfilling or hot as they wanted it to.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
get that. Mine was kind of like a combo. I wanted
Mm,
to prove how valuable and good I was by what I could do on the material.
100%. Yeah.
And then
Sometimes I'm like, am I running a Capricorn support group here? Like, what's going on?
so I did that and then I was like, is this it? Like what? Like I thought I was supposed to arrive and feel fulfilled
Amazing.
and I'm completely empty on the
Yeah.
inside.
I built the business. I saved the money. I bought the house. I had the kid. I married the person. Why don't I feel great? Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And then I was like, huh. This has been like a complete, not a complete waste of time, but part of me did feel that. It was like I was probably about 34. I think the first time I realized like,
Well, isn't that timing interesting?
yeah, I like was like, huh, this is it. This is not what I thought it was going to be, you know?
How did
And
that 12th house perfection year go for you
yeah, it was
at 35?
I actually love my 12th house perfections. I have a pattern that I go that I now that I've been through so many of them because I'm older, that I have seen like I go into retreat. I go into respite. I go to the mountaintop or to the cave. I cut and run is what I do for that year. And it's great. It feels really good. It's I really enjoy that hermitage.
Mm-hmm.
So
And so
that's
how did that weave into when you were having those 34-year-old realizations of like, is this it?
yeah, it set me on a new path to be like searching for who I was, and that's really where the codependent awareness started to happen. I also started my Pluto square around that time, midlife transit, the first one. And because I have four Libra placements and Pluto is the earliest one, I had Pluto square Pluto, Pluto square Mercury, Pluto square the moon, Pluto square the sun, and it like on and on and on and on. And so it was like years of Pluto coming to like tell me what's what. And then Neptune square and all of the midlife transits started to happen. And that's really where I started this whole meandering path of like just following my yes, which doesn't is not logical. It makes no sense. She's completely irrational. And so like learning how to like surf those rhythms have has been wild. And I'm still not great at it either. There are times that I still catch myself. It's all awareness, but how I treat myself in those moments of missteps is just completely different. The way I talk to myself is completely different. And also being okay with like desire, I know is part of your work. It's part of mine. It's like understanding that desire has a purpose that might be more spiritual than maybe we thought it was in the first place, and like ways to engage with it and come into relationship with that. Like so the word that's if I could encapsulate it, it was like I wanted to be not just turned on by my life, but I wanted to like seduce my life. Like I wanted to be with it.
One.
But yeah, I want it to be turned on in life. And it's very fascinating to be at this perimenopausal. I'm not quite sure when I'll hit menopause. Like it hasn't happened yet, but I'm very fascinated by this transition and what it's going to be like to be following arrows, to be in with desire, like through this, like how it will change or how it will feel or what will happen. I don't know. I don't know. I only know
Well,
like reading like what's changed for other women as they go through that phase, but I don't know.
well, that's the beauty of
Mystery.
the portal,
The
is
portal.
that we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you said something, if we think about life as relation, the desire to be not just turned on by life, but to seduce life, aren't turned on things just so much more attractive?
Yes.
When someone's just really hot for whatever is going on, isn't that just way more? Don't you want to lean towards it and go in? And is life any different?
I
Yeah.
always explain it. Well, actually, I've never said this out loud, but
Yay.
you're giving me strength, Grace. It's like it's like getting head from someone that enjoys giving it versus someone
Yes.
who's just giving it because they think they should. It's like completely different.
I mean, that's the game of desire, though. Like,
Right.
that's the vulnerability of it. That desire pulls us into relation and
Hmm.
exchange. Like, desire pulls us towards life. And I was teaching about it recently in a class in my membership. And it was like, desire is just how you think you're going to get what you want. It's not about getting what you want, it's about going towards it. It's about going towards it. It's about feeling the burn and going towards it. And I think that, like you said, I think, and I have experienced, like there's a sneaky way that desire is like actually about purification.
Mm.
It's like, I'm going to pull you into the fire. And as we know, sometimes we're so sure there's shit that we want and we get it. We're like, this is not what I wanted. And desire is like, ha 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 ha. But you could have only
Yes.
known that if you did it. It's about getting to that true desire? Like, what's actually the flame? What's actually you? What's actually the self? And I think something else that's clicking, well, it's not clicking for me, but I think belongs in this conversation is that there's a transgressive nature to desire. Eros doesn't give a fuck about your public image or
Yeah.
whether you're good or bad. If anything, Eros is often drawing us towards that transgressive line where we're like, hmm, who will I be if I do that? And desire doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a way there. So, yeah, it's really inconvenient when, going back to this image of like the red yoginis are like, well, it's convenient if you're trying to be a holier than thou, self righteous, perfect, unstained monk in an ashram. And then the whore shows up and says, follow me. But that's what desire does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely illogical in some, in like the way that you think it's going to be or the way that you think it's going to show up. Yeah, it's interesting that you're talking that you meant something you mentioned just now jogged for me the lot of exaltation in the astrological chart. And recently, one of my teachers was talking about how if there's a lot of exaltation, then there's also a lot of fall, which would be completely opposite. And okay, so I was like all down with this.
That
And what
tracks.
that tracks. And what was funny was my lot of exaltation is in the seventh house. So that means my law of fall is in the first house. And it happens to be really close to my lot of fortune. So
I love everything about what you just said.
I know, which is so it means like the more that I am me, like becoming who I am, what I'm here to experience, and also what happens to tie in. Oh, and my lot of spirit is in the first as well, because new moon, baby. I have all of that going on. The more that I'm becoming me, the more that I'm engaged with what turns me on in life, the more that I'm living, I guess, my natal promise, you could say, there is this concept of fall from grace or like what other people think or how I might be perceived, you know? And that might turn me on, but I'm sure I'm sure I'm somewhat of haven't quite lived up to the expectations of the people who raised me.
Yeah. And I'm sure eventually you'll get to the part where you kind of enjoy that a little bit.
I have started to a little bit, but it's also hard because that I think is in particularly in my case, I grew up I don't have birth times for my family of origin, so I only can know where some of their placements lie in relationship to mine, for sure. And these were like talking about like people who do everything right and who follow there's a lot of earth. There's definitely like a lot of earth in there. We're gonna do the thing the way that we're supposed to do exactly, and there's no deviation. And that I know is an ancestral pattern as well for safety, for all of these things. And then I come along and I'm just like this giant wild card that just does not fit in. Grace, I used to swear I was adopted, but I look so much like everyone in my family. Like, there's just no way.
I mean, I think that's really common with people who find themselves on magical paths, but also people who become healers. I think there's a way, I mean, there's a reason that most of the alchemical texts are like, at some point, you'll have to leave mommy and daddy behind, or you cannot see the kingdom.
Yeah.
Like that attachment to needing mommy and daddy to approve, especially it tends to be for the people who come to me, it's the mother usually, where they're like, the mother was the one who is the person they're still either consciously or unconsciously trying to prove to. And it's like, well, we never had that initiation where we cut from our lowercase mother to the capital M mother, to where there was literally nothing you could do that's so fucked up that she would be like, no, that's not my baby.
Yeah.
I always think of Kali Ma, and she's like, I've got all your arms wrapped around my waist. I've got
Hmm.
all your heads around my neck. Whether you were the murderer or the saint, I got you. The
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
And that's something you can only know and encounter through initiation. It's deeply powerful. And I think I hear that from a lot of people who are healers. Everyone feels like the black sheep. Everyone's like, do I live in this family? What the fuck? It's always interesting because my husband's family is so dear And they're also I always say that they incarnated as a pod, like they incarnated to work shit out together.
Mm.
And I always feel like my family incarnated as a bunch of individuals. Like we're just a bunch of individuals working out what we're here to work out. And I remember the moment I realized that, maybe what I was supposed to learn from my dad was just how to not be obedient. And
Mm.
I learned how to not be obedient. I learned not how to be the dutiful daughter. And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
That I'm like that helped me get really free. And I'm grateful that I am not her anymore at all. And
Hmm.
I'm sure they're very disappointed by that in a lot of ways, but I'm having a great time.
I'm still, I think, on my way to, I have moved past letting it stop me, right? Like, obviously, I'm publicly out as an astrologer. I am sharing my opinions on a podcast, like for all the world to hear. Like, so I've definitely like moved past a degree of it. And that's why I'm so curious, like, eventually, I am curious about death. I'm not like, I'm not trying to court, like, I'm talking about physical death. I'm very curious, like what happens. I mean, I think it's hard not to be. And I also realize like nothing might happen. Like this might be it. This might be the dream. Like we might have some level of experience that it could, like I have to entertain the fact that this it all could be a wild hallucination. And there's just the void, which also sounds nice and peaceful and calm in some ways and chaotic in others. But like part of me is like, oh, what like a giant mess. And I'm so curious, like, will I get to know all the things, like that kind of galaxy brain on the other side? Will I ever get to know? That's kind of what I think about sometimes. It's like, will I know?
I mean, the ultimate mystery for sure. There's only one way we can know. And I think a lot about like the magical path is, or what I think it is building that bridge. What does the Gospel of Thomas say? If you die before you die, when you die, you'll have already done it. And so I think that's a lot of what's a part of like the initiatory path or the magical path is we're rehearsing it now.
Yeah.
We're building the bridge to the mystery now. The capital,
Hmm.
why would we constellate the capital S self? Because everywhere you go, there you are. That's the gold.
Hmm. Absolutely. I love that. And I think so many initiatory experiences do point that way, like point the direction that there's something that where death on this plane in this incarnation is not the end. But again, I always like think about the cosmic joke. Like if I'm part of the cosmic joke. And what if the cosmic joke is that the end is just the end? And then things seem like, well, things aren't so serious then, are they?
Yeah. The way I like to talk about it is that I remember there was a really distinct moment. I've always been like an artist and a very creative person. And I remember there was a distinct moment in sort of my like massive leaving religion anger years where I realized that like I think actually the story that we tell about reality is art. And if that's the case, why not choose the beautiful story?
Yeah.
Since nobody knows actually, I think we can capital K know, conversation for a different time. But if nobody actually can say with any exact certainty it's exactly like this, then why not just pick the beautiful story? And I like, okay, then I'm going to pick the beautiful one. And I feel like I always visualize myself with a little cosmic backpack and I see a beautiful proposition in a movie or a story, or I have a meditation, or I, have an ecstatic experience that it shows me a little fragment or a fractal of something, and I just put it in my backpack. I'm like, that sounds right to me. That sounds beautiful to me. That's going in the backpack.
That feels right to me as well in terms of like the building of the story. Like we don't know. I mean, like you said, conversation for another
Yeah.
time. I'm like, oh,
By
that
don't know, I mean we kind of can, but we can't.
we could, yeah, like we exactly. Like there's always this question, and part of me is like this desire to like just be in love with the question and
Or
like
as Rilke said, live the question.
live the question. Yeah, live the question. I love that. Oh, it's so wonderful. Oh, Grace, it's been so beautiful to chat with you today and to hear more of your perspective and worldview. I have enjoyed it so much. Could you share for listeners like what you're currently working on or offering and where people can find you online?
Thank you for that. And I've also really enjoyed getting to connect with you here and nerd out on all of our things. My website is mgallardice.com. And from there, most people can find both my podcast and my newsletter, which are the ways that I stay in touch or megaphone out into the world the most. And what I'm really hot for right now is I have a membership called Ma that's all about erotic devotion, that's about constellating the self, that's about building both our somatic and our spiritual capacity and wisdom for eros, for the soul, and for getting to like the true alchemical wholeness of who we are. A big component of what I think my work or my quote good news is that it's really built around this theology of wholeness, not goodness. That we are not here to be good. We are here to become whole.
Mm.
And that's such a big worldview shift, embodiment shift, and magical initiatory shift. It's something that we cannot do by ourselves. And I think it is also that is the mother's path. She is the other side of the coin that pulls us into relation in such a way that we have to alchemize that. And that's the thing that I'm most hot for right now. And in the beginning of December on the 5th and 6th, I'm doing an open house that's free for my membership. And so if anyone listening to this is curious, turned on, remotely interested in anything that we've talked about today, I would just invite you to come and lurk and enjoy some of that free open house and get juiced up before the holidays. And yeah, I think that's all that people need to know.
That's amazing. Yeah, and we'll link everything in the show notes for folks too, so you can find a link there. And yeah, it was such a delight, Grace. Thank you for sharing your presence with us and your wisdom with us. Your joy is palpable. I
Oh,
can feel the juiciness in what you're working on and what is swirling around you and constellating around you. And I'm sure listeners do as well.
thank
Thank
you.
you. And that was my episode with Grace. I hope you enjoyed it. It was so much fun for me to sit with someone else, another Libra sun in the eighth with a Pisces rising. I am just in awe of the similarities as well as being appreciative of the differences of how we approach our path, how we approach our practice, and how we walk this path of devotion. There's definitely some similarities there, but just seeing how it blooms and blossoms in someone else's life is just such an honor and a privilege. And listeners, if again, like Grace said, if anything in this episode appealed to you, please check out the links in the show notes. Grace is offering a free open house on December 5th and 6th. So check that out. You can also find a link to her podcast as well as her newsletter and website in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I am sending you so much love from all the places in between. Until next time.